Good afternoon or possibly good morning, depending on where you're listening to us from today. But thank you for calling in or logging in today for our presentation on the Checkbook IRA account, how it works, and what you need to know in regards to self-directed IRAs, and in this case, and what we're going to talk about today, getting more control over your account in the form of getting those funds actually put into a checkbook that you have control over. My name is Scott Maurer. I'm the Director of Business Development for Advance IRA and your presenter today. My background is I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Florida, although I don't do any legal work for Advance clients, especially as we talk today about the Checkbook IRA. I can't set up the LLC or the other structures that you might use in order to obtain that type of control, but that is my educational background. And I've been with Advance now since early 2006, and in that time, have seen people purchase many different types of assets, some using a checkbook control structure, whether it's an LLC or a trust, others simply buying properties, buying assets directly in the name of the IRA today. And so what the hope of today's presentation today is to go through the different ways you can invest in different alternative assets using an IRA account, whether it's using the checkbook control and contrasting that with individuals who are looking to use maybe just as having the administrator do it for the IRA account. Now, if you are participating in the webinar live today, please make sure, if you have any questions, to type those into the chat box on your screen. If you're somebody who's listening to the recorded version, make sure you write down your questions. My contact information will be at the end of the presentation today. I'll make sure that you can contact me either by phone or email to get your questions answered. Just some other learning opportunities before we get into the presentation today. Just wanted to alert everyone's attention to, or bring your attention to, we had a couple recent webinars that were well attended and very educational and informative. One had an attorney come on and talk about landlord and tenant law. A lot of people obviously use their IRAs to invest in real estate, so that topic was pretty timely for a lot of individuals, whether they're self-directing their IRA into real estate or not. The landlord-tenant issues were discussed. We also had a guest come on and talk about real estate crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has become kind of a buzzword and a new term that's been thrown out there for people to, a different way to raise capital. And certainly if you have money in your IRA, you can invest with other people into their crowdfunding projects. So both of those webinars are available on our YouTube channel. And today's webinar, the recording as well, once we should have that up either later today or tomorrow, will also be on our YouTube channel with a number of other events. We do have two live seminars coming up, one in our Tampa office and one in our Atlanta office this Friday from noon to 1:30 on being the bank with your IRA account, where we'll talk specifically about using your IRA as a private lender and what that entails and the different considerations there. And we do have our next webinar scheduled a week from today, same time, noon to 1 Eastern time, on how to buy real estate in your IRA. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that today as we contrast using a checkbook control account with doing it just through the IRA administrator. But that webinar will delve a little bit more into the issues involved with looking to buy real estate through your IRA account. Now, as we start off a lot of webinars, we mentioned our quick disclaimer that Advance IRA and its employees do not provide legal, tax, or investment advice, and we certainly don't endorse any particular products. The information we're going to cover today is merely for educational purposes, to just alert you to different ways people are investing their IRA account and kind of some of the issues to be aware of and what that process looks like. But if you have questions on your IRA account or what we talk about today, and you have legal questions, you have tax questions, or maybe you're looking for advice on the best way to handle your transaction, we can refer you to attorneys or accountants or other advisors before you start your investment, before you start your particular transaction. You can certainly call us with some questions, but ultimately we will defer to those professionals in those areas, and certainly, like I said, have referrals to give you if you want some more information. Now, just a quick background on Advanta IRA. We've been around since 2004, and the only thing that we do at Advanta is self-directed investment administration and record keeping. So we don't sell any products, we don't prepare tax returns, we don't give legal advice. The only thing we do is to handle qualified money, whether it's IRA or old 401k funds, and put those and do the administration and record keeping for a number of alternative investments. Again, investments you typically cannot make through your brokerage firm or your local bank. We also offer a concierge customer service experience for all clients with an account manager representative being assigned to each individual person who opens up an account so that you have one point of contact while you're an Advanta customer. Now, 3 key points just to take away from the seminar today. I think if you get anything out of what we talk about today in the next little bit, again, 3 key points. One, remember here what accounts you can self-direct, whether you're using a checkbook or not. It's important to know kind of if I'm listening to what Scott's talking about today and I'm listening to hear what I could do with my IRA and all these different investment options, what kind of money do I have currently that would even qualify to be used in these fashions and with Advanta? And certainly one of the other key points is going to be the IRA administrator versus the checkbook IRA, and contrasting how each of those works and understanding that when you go to make an investment with a self-directed IRA, you don't have to use a checkbook IRA or a checkbook LLC to do it. And there are a lot of investment providers out there who insist that is the case, that you have to do that. And the answer is simply you don't have to. Sometimes it's much more convenient, can make things easier on you, that we'll talk about today. But understanding that you can make investments through a checkbook IRA, but you can also do those same investments through the IRA administrator as well, and going through the process of what each of those kind of transactions looks like. And we also will finish the presentation today, and something to take away are the advantages and disadvantages of checkbook control. And I'm sure a lot of you on the call today that are listening or listening to the recorded version are looking for that type of information to find out really why would I consider this, and kind of what are some of the drawbacks in doing this type of investing. And before we jump into that main content, just for anyone on the call who's kind of new to self-direction, or just something that's happened recently, kind of why haven't I heard about this in the past? The reason why most people are unfamiliar with a self-directed IRA, the ability again to take your IRA account, invest in those things that you know and control, you're not going to be told that by your bank or brokerage firm who's not offering you those particular investment products. They're offering you mutual funds, stocks, bonds, CDs, things that they sell that is not in their business interest to make those other assets in real estate and in private notes and private placements available to their clients. They're certainly not going to send you an email. They're not going to knock on your door and tell you that you have these other investment possibilities. And since most people don't necessarily go looking for that information, they simply don't know that it's possible. Obviously, everyone on the call today is probably familiar from at least with the phrase self-direction, all the way up to people who probably have been self-directing their IRA for a number of years as well. So we have a lot of people on that spectrum, but what you all have in common is you took the step either recently or at some point to find out more about what you could do with your IRA, what you could do with your retirement account. IRS regulations are actually quite broad in what they allow you to invest in. The only things they say you can't buy with your IRA are life insurance or collectibles. Is the only 2 prohibited investments for your IRA to make inside, basically have your IRA purchase and earn income from. So again, very small restriction on the range of investments. It's just the custodians, the banks and the brokerage firms who hold 95% of retirement funds, who limit you and exclude you from being able to invest in other alternatives. So the benefits of self-direction, why do people choose to self-direct? Over the years, in talking with clients and talking with potential clients, the answers we get are somewhat, sometimes across the board, but a lot of times they share some key features. One is people looking for true diversity within their retirement account, wanting to really put their eggs in multiple baskets, not just mutual funds and choosing from a variety of mutual funds, but getting monies out into different markets altogether that are not connected. Choosing the investment that you understand is probably the predominant reason why people have chosen to self-direct. Investing in stocks, investing in bonds isn't something that comes naturally to everyone to understand that and how that works and how to read the market. But investing in real estate or investing in your friend's new startup business, and you understand what he does for a living and how he's successful with things, choosing that type of an investment that you understand is again really one of the driving reasons why people self-direct. And along with that is choosing what type of return is acceptable, and the ability to invest in tangible assets, investing in something you can see, something that you can touch. Because again, one of the benefits or reasons why people self-direct is that they're looking to get the money out of the stock market. They don't understand it. They don't like the roller coaster of it. That makes them uneasy at night. I can get the money out of there, put it into something I understand and I can control. Now, again, one of the key points in the seminar today was to talk about the types of accounts that you can self-direct, and just to understand, again, some of you may already be self-directing, so you already understand this aspect, but for all the others, there are multiple different types of accounts that you could self-direct and actually take money from and use to invest in alternative assets, and that includes any type of IRA account, whether you have a traditional IRA, whether you have a Roth IRA, whether you have an employer-based IRA. If you own your own business or you work for a small business, you may have access to or have participated in a SEP or a simple IRA account. There are also the ability, if you own your own business, to start an individual 401k, or if you had worked for somebody, you worked for a company, you worked for a local school board, you worked for the government, you might have built up a lot of funds inside an employer plan, like a 401k, a 403b, 457 plans. If you're no longer working for those employers, you have the ability to take that money from those accounts and simply roll it over into a traditional IRA account. So again, looking and seeing what types of monies can be self-directed. If I have any type of IRA, if I have any type of former employer's plan, if I have any education savings or health savings accounts, those can also be self-directed. The one account that is missing from this list are current employer plans. If you have a current 401k plan, the only reason it's not on this list is because not all 401ks allow you to roll over to an IRA if you are still employed with that particular employer. So you would need to check with your employer if you're still working for the company that is sponsoring that former 401k plan to see about your options to move those funds over. Now, to getting the money moved over is somewhere we see some advisors and some people have misconceptions about what is involved. To move money from one IRA to another, it's considered a transfer. It's a non-reportable, non-taxable event. You can move money directly from one IRA to another. If it doesn't touch your hands, it's, again, non-taxable, non-reportable, and it's an unlimited amount of times that you can move money between your IRA accounts. Again, some advisors get confused when you talk about transfers. Not all of them are as up to date, up to speed on the different methods of moving money. But if you have money in one IRA with a brokerage firm, you can move that money to Advanta by doing a transfer. No tax consequence. You can move the money back from Advanta to the brokerage firm even if you'd like as well. And again, it's a non-taxable, non-reportable event to move the money in that fashion. Similar to a transfer, if you have money in an old employer's plan, or I guess a current employer's plan that allows for it as well, 401k, 403b, 457 plans, you can also roll those monies to an IRA. Again, the money doesn't touch your hands. So again, it's a non-taxable event to you, and you can do as many direct rollovers as you'd like as well into an IRA that you may be eligible for. So IRA to IRA is considered a trustee-to-trustee transfer, non-taxable event. Moving money from an old employer's plan to an IRA, again, non-taxable event, considered a direct rollover. So we talk about possible IRA investments. There's really a number of different things that people can invest in. As far as the things we see, I mean, again, most people familiar with mutual funds, stocks, bonds, etc., within their IRA account. We also see, though, at Advanta, because we deal in alternatives, people investing in real estate, whether it's the buying of a rental property, of buying of a rehab fix and flip, buying of a condo, single-family home, commercial real estate. The list really goes on with as far as the investment possibilities. You see people invest in notes and paper assets. My IRA lending money to a third party. That's the subject of the live seminars we have coming up this Friday that we still have seats available for. But you can use your IRA basically as a bank and be a private lender and hold a note. And certainly the other category, which we'll get into a little bit today, we talk about LLCs, trusts, private stock, foreign currency, exchange accounts, etc. There's a lot of different other investments. Again, the only two things you can't buy with an IRA or your IRA cannot invest in are life insurance and collectibles. Again, so the only restrictions the IRS has on investments that you can purchase are that you can't buy life insurance and you can't buy collectibles. Now, we had a question come up on the chat, and I would encourage anyone else who has a question as we go along, please get those questions typed in to the chat box on your screen. A question came up and said, will Advanta advise my Oppenheimer guy if he is unfamiliar with the transfer process? And the answer is yes. We certainly can talk to your advisor, or whether it's someone in the back office. But those big companies like Oppenheimer are familiar with that process if you get to the right person. And a lot of times, it might be your financial advisor that you meet on a day-to-day basis to help. He helps guide you through your different investment selections. May not be as in tune with the transfer process on the back end, but I guarantee you there's someone in their office who is, and we will certainly talk to them, though, and if need be, to explain that process. Again, great question. As we move along, if you have other questions, please bring them in as we go. Again, so the main genesis of today's presentation, the title, is really the checkbook control, or the checkbook IRA, and kind of what that is, how it works, and again, as we're going to talk about, what are some of the pros and cons to using your IRA in this fashion. Now, before we really can define a checkbook control, I think it's more important to define really what a self-directed IRA is when you have the custodian or the administrator hold the account and hold all the assets. Now, when you have an account set up simply with the administrator without checkbook control, what typically happens is you transfer your funds from your brokerage IRA into the administrator's into the IRA you set up with the administrator. You then direct the administrator for all purchases, whether you want to buy a piece of real estate, a note, a private placement, etc. And the administrator will make that investment at your direction, make sure the assets are properly titled, and any uninvested cash simply sits in your account. And now, as you have income coming in from your investments, they will be deposited back into your IRA, into the cash portion of your account. And you would also contact the administrator for any disbursements, whether it's a purchase or an expense, you're buying a new asset, or if you are directing us to pay a bill. If you buy a piece of rental property, for instance, and you have a yearly property tax bill or a monthly utility bill, you send us those bills, we get those paid out of the IRA. So the administrator is basically holding the cash. And in order to make an investment in a purchase, to pay a bill, to deposit income, you go through the administrator, who takes care of receiving that income, paying the bills, and keeping all the records related to that. Just had another quick question come up I'll get to in just a moment. So the custodian and the administrator kind of method is where you're simply directing us, in this case Advanta, to write the checks, make the investments, and we work at your direction. What the checkbook control allows you to do, the same process of getting an account set up, getting funds transferred in from your current custodian, your brokerage firm moves the money over to Advanta, but rather than have us hold the cash and you tell us what to invest in and what bills to pay and what income to receive and deposit, you direct us instead to take the cash in your account and put it into an LLC, or put it into a trust that you establish, where you've established a third-party bank account. So you've set up an LLC, or you've set up a trust, and then gone to a bank, whether it's your local bank or some other bank that you know, open an account in that entity's name, and direct us to move the cash from your IRA into that third party's bank account. That is, again, the bank account titled in your LLC or trust. And then what that enables you to do as the manager of that LLC is to now direct all purchases and expenses. You simply buy assets in the name of that entity. And since you have access to the checkbook, you write the checks, or you send the wire out of that account to make the investment. Any expenses you have come up, you can simply write the check, again, directly out of there. So the checkbook control is kind of exactly what it states. It's giving you direct control over the cash in your IRA account by virtue of using an LLC to then make those investments. All right, so get into some of the questions we have before we go to the next slide. One question, is a 529 an option for a checkbook IRA? And unfortunately, the answer is no. 529s are educational plans that are set up through different states. 529 is not the same as a Coverdell education savings account. So unfortunately, a 529 typically cannot be used in a checkbook fashion. You have to contact your state where you have the 529 plan to ask what options you have for investment. The checkbook IRA is not going to be one of them. A question came in, and this will get into more into the presentation we talked about. Is an LLC required for checkbook control over a self-directed IRA account? If you want checkbook control, generally we've only seen that happen in two fashions. One is using an LLC. The other is using a private trust. But in order to get that degree of control, to have checkbook control, you are going to have to set up some type of third-party entity in order to get those funds. It is not possible with the way we are set up, and really with any administrator set up, to have us purchase the asset in the name of the IRA and then just give you a checkbook in order to do it. It requires you to set up some type of third-party entity, whether it's an LLC or whether it's a trust. Another question came in and says, but isn't that technically touching the funds? In this fashion, this kind of leads into our next slide here. In just a moment, we'll talk about it, but there is some legal background, a legal precedent for people who've done this type of entity and using your IRA to invest to an LLC. What the question is referring to is the inability, if you're the IRA owner, you're not supposed to have basically touching the funds. Otherwise, the IRS considers that to be a distribution. But in this case, it's not your IRA distributing the money to you that you're now touching, and it's causing a taxable event. You're having your IRA put money into and make an investment in an LLC. And then kind of we go into checkbook control and talk about this particular using an LLC. It's important to understand the terminology involved. For an LLC, the members, you hear me use the term member as we go through the rest of the webinar today. A member is the shareholder, basically, of the LLC. People who own equity, the equity holders, the owners of an LLC, are referred to as members. And the people who have the decision-making capacity, whether that's one person or several, are referred to as a manager or managers. And it's equivalent to the officer or a president. The other terminology within an LLC that we talk a lot about at Advanta, especially if you're looking at doing this structure, is an operating agreement. Now, an operating agreement and their ownership percentages, and it's also going to list who the managers are, and it's going to list how new members are to be admitted, how the LLC is to run, etc. But the operating agreement is the one document that we need to see at Advanta if you're looking at doing this type of a structure. We need you to have an LLC operating agreement that lists the IRA as a member. You'll see here the IRA cannot be a manager or managing member. You do have to have a physical person filling that role. And if you are as the IRA owner decide to be the manager and have that checkbook control, you should not receive any compensation or commingle any funds. So you shouldn't be the LLC should not be paying you a salary. If you are the IRA owner and you're the manager, you should not be receiving a salary. You're simply writing the checks, paying the bills, keeping track of the records for the IRA not being compensated. And you should not be commingling any of your personal money into that account as well. Now, the checkbook control, I mentioned there's some legal precedent. There's two court cases that I think of particular importance that you can look up, and here the sites are on this slide. The Swanson v. Commissioner case is the one that started the industry back kind of in 1996. That's when checkbook control really got started. People wanting to, the IRS was challenging in both of these cases whether or not an IRA owner, is able to be the manager. In the case of Swanson v. Commissioner, the IRS, the tax court established at that time, yes, that's possible. And in the case of Ellis, the tax court reconfirmed that it is possible and you should not be paid. In the case of Mr. Ellis, he made the mistake of setting up a checkbook structure, but then then having himself compensated for doing that type of managerial role. So in that case, the Ellis case confirmed, the tax court said, hey, being a manager is not the issue, but certainly paying yourself and receiving compensation are. If you're looking at these types of entities, I just would encourage you, talk with an attorney, talk with a local CPA. We can give you names of people if you need help with it. Again, we don't approve or disapprove of any investment structure. We've seen people do the checkbook control. We don't really try to advocate either way. It really is up to you. But definitely get some information on it. Don't go to a one-stop shop where they will charge you a couple $1,000s to get the IRA form, get the LLC form. You can do it far less using our services and using maybe that of a local CPA or an attorney. Now, the other method that we've seen individuals get checkbook control using their IRA account is by using a trust. Now, with trust, there's many different types of trust. There are revocable trusts, special needs trusts, life insurance trusts that people are familiar with kind of in your everyday life. You've probably seen some type of trust agreement. Now, all trusts, whether you're the one you're using for your IRA, whether it's the one you're using to pass on your assets or your hold assets for life insurance or for special needs, all the trusts have similar parties involved. You have grantors who contribute the assets to the trust. You have a trustee who manages the assets in a capacity as a fiduciary for the trust. And you have a beneficiary who's going to be the ultimate recipient of the assets in the trust. Now, when an IRA is setting up a trust for this type of arrangement, the IRA is both the grantor, because it's contributing the assets into the trust, and the IRA is the beneficiary, because the IRA ultimately is going to receive all of the assets that are held in the particular trust. But with Advanta, we do not permit the IRA or the IRA owner to be the trustee of the trust. The case law that we talked about on the previous slide is for LLCs only. It does not address the trust. And since a trustee is a fiduciary, we insist if you're doing checkbook control using a trust, that you're going to have to get a third party to act in that capacity for you. Now, another great question just came up. Again, keep throwing those questions out there. So, did you say Advanta would assist in setting up the LLC? No. What we would be able to do is give you some guidance on the wording to use in the operating agreement for the IRA as a member, but it would be up to you to find a CPA or an attorney, someone else who's actually going to set up the LLC. We do not set up the LLC at Advanta. Whether you do it individually, whether you have somebody else do it, that's fine. It doesn't matter to us. We just are not permitted to personally do that for your IRA account. All right, so I think the best way really to illustrate how checkbook control works, kind of, and what applies with an LLC or a trust, is to really go over a case study. It's going to be the same case study, but we're going to look at it three different ways. One, which we'll look at using the IRA administrator to hold and administer the asset. We'll look at it using an LLC, and then we'll look at it using a trust and what's involved with each different scenario. This case study is going to involve Joe. Joe has money in an IRA, wants to buy real estate, and decides to invest in single-family rental properties. And he finds a house that he can purchase for $100,000. Needs enough $20,000 of work to get it ready to rent, and then afterwards he'll get some cash flow coming back into his IRA. So what are the different ways Joe could purchase this particular property? Now, if he's going to, again, the first case study we'll go through here is talking about having the IRA purchase through the IRA administrator itself. Now, the first step, and it's going to be the first step for all of the different examples, Joe would need to set up his account, open up and fund his account, complete our application, do that transfer or rollover from the other custodian, and we'll have an account number issued for him in less than 24 hours. So Joe's going to, within 24 hours, going to have the IRA opened. We'll have sent the request for the funds to be moved over. He's going to have an account number then to use on his different investments. Now, if he's going to buy this piece of real estate through the IRA administrator, he's going to identify the property for purchase and then notify us, hey, Advanta, I found this particular property. It's for sale at $100,000. I'm ready to make the investment. We will work with Joe to make sure that the contract, so that he's going to be the buyer, the IRA is going to be the buyer on the contract. The IRA should be listed as Advanta, the buyer's name would be Advanta IRA for benefit of Joe Smith's IRA and his account number. So we clearly state on the contract that his IRA is the purchaser for the investment. Joe's going to then approve the contract and send it back to Advanta. We will sign off on the contract and issue any escrow or earnest money deposit from his IRA to hold the property. Now then, going forward to the next step, this contract's now been accepted. We've issued a deposit. His IRA is moving towards closing. Our job as the administrator in this scenario is to work with the title agent or the attorney handling the closing to make sure that all documents, whether it's the deed, whether it's the HUD or TRID statement, the title policies, et cetera, all should be drafted in the name of his IRA account. So it should be very clearly stated on all these documents that his IRA is the purchaser. And Joe then will need to review all those documents prepared by the agent or the attorney and approve of them as well. Again, it's not Advance's job to go through and look at the HUD, look at the deed, make sure it's correct. That will be the responsibility of Joe in order to make this investment. Now, once Joe has approved of the documents, again, now we're holding the cash. He's transferred this cash in from his brokerage account. The cash is sitting in his IRA with us. We've signed all the closing documents. Once he's approved them, we will then wire the funds to the closing. So we actually send the cash out of his IRA. We issue the wire, we issue the cashier's check to actually make that closing and complete it. So we've signed the documents and we're issuing the funds. So Joe is still having to go through us and tell us exactly what he wants us to do in regards to this transaction. Now, once this property has been purchased after closing, he would go find his tenant. So Joe's going to go out there, maybe put an ad out, look for his tenant, and he's going to direct that tenant, when he gets one in place, to send their rent checks directly back to Advance. So they're going to make their rent checks payable to Advance IRA for benefit of Joe's account, mail them to our office. We will then deposit it into Joe's particular IRA account. Joe will then also have directed any expense, the property taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, etc., to be paid by the IRA from cash in the account. So Joe gets a tax bill, he gets a maintenance bill, he gets an insurance bill. He cuts those checks, or he gets those bills, those expenses, sends them to us. We cut a check out of his IRA and mail that to his particular vendor. Joe can then track his activity online and through email notifications. So he can go online, he'll see all the history of all the payments, all the income coming into his account, and our system will send automatic emails every time money is received in his account or anytime we've paid a bill out of his account. So Joe can track all that activity online as well. And we would act then as the record keeper and administrator, keeping track of and copies of all of the income, all of the rent checks, and paying all of the bills as well. And so the property just stays within the IRA. The IRA is now growing through the rents and profits on any sale. Another great question came up, says, you are not required to have a property manager? And the answer to that question is no, you are not required to have a property manager. You can direct your tenants to send the checks to us. You can direct us to pay those bills, and you can be the liaison between all of those different parties. Now, you can certainly have a property manager, because it does, we do issue checks within 1 to 2 business days at the most when we get an invoice. If it makes sense to have a property manager, you can certainly do that. We have many clients who have them. We have many that don't, but you are not required to have one. Another great question, is there a fee for every transaction, money in or out of the self-directed IRA? And this will get into some kind of jumping ahead a little bit to one of the benefits of the checkbook IRA. Now, we do not charge a fee every time we are receiving rent or income or paying a bill from an account. We do charge a fee for each new investment, each new purchase going through a closing process that you make inside your IRA account. And so we'll get back to that question a little bit towards the end of the presentation. But we do not charge a fee for each check that we write to pay a bill, or each rent check or income check that we deposit back into the account. Another great question, can you do maintenance and repairs? The answer is no. If your IRA owns real estate as an investment property, you and any disqualified person, which includes yourself, a spouse, kids, grandkids, parents, and grandkids, are prohibited from engaging in certain activity with the IRA. So in that particular case, you as a disqualified person are prohibited from doing the maintenance and repairs on that property. The IRS does expect that your IRA will hire a third party, someone unrelated to you, to actually do the repairs and do the maintenance. All right, so this case study again really illustrated buying the property through the IRA administrator, and how that works, how Advanta would, in this case, receive income, pay bills at the direction of the client. Now, to get checkbook control, I've mentioned already, one of the ways you can get checkbook control is by using an LLC. And so what involved with Joe still wanting to buy this same property that we had the case study with, but using an LLC to do it? As I mentioned, the initial steps are still the same. He needs to open up an IRA account with us, do a transfer or rollover from another custodian, and then we'll have an account number issued. So the same process, getting an IRA open and getting the funds transferred from a current brokerage account. Only this time, because Joe wants to have checkbook control, Joe's first step would then be to form an LLC with the division of corporation. So he can choose whatever state he wants to set up the LLC, choose a name for the LLC, again, possibly use an attorney, CPA, legal services, someone else to file the articles. And the articles then name Joe as the manager of the LLC. Now, the articles that you file with whatever state you choose should not mention the IRA account at all. When you file articles for an LLC, you typically only name who the manager is and give the name of the LLC, the address, etc. Now, the document, again, I mentioned that Advanta will need to see will be the LLC operating agreement. So the next step after getting the LLC established with the state is to have an operating agreement drafted. And in that operating agreement, the IRA would be listed as a 100% owner. In this particular case for Joe, the operating agreement would show his IRA, Advanta IRA for benefit of Joe Smith's IRA and his account number, as the sole member of this particular LLC. So again, this particular entity, sole owner is his IRA account, and the operating agreement would reflect that, and the operating agreement would also reflect that Joe is the manager of that LLC. Now the next steps, instead of having us again sign a contract, sign the closing documents, Joe instead is going to send us the operating agreement, and we will sign the operating agreement on behalf of his IRA once Joe has approved it. Okay, so he's going to approve the operating agreement. He's going to approve all the LLC documents for us. Once that happens, we will issue a check from his IRA to fund the LLC, and Joe can take that check, go to his local bank, and then open up an account in the name of the LLC and deposit that check into the LLC account. So now his LLC has been formed, his LLC has been funded. Joe then can go buy that piece of real estate and enter into contract under his LLC. And Joe will sign all the closing documents on behalf of the LLC in his position as manager. So he's kind of taken the signing authority and then taken that upon himself. Now as the manager, he will sign on behalf of the LLC. And he can also then issue the funds from the bank account to actually close. So all the closing documents prepared by the attorney or title company show the LLC as the buyer, Joe signing as manager, and then Joe issues the funds out of the LLC bank account to make the purchase. Then going forward, the rent checks from the tenant can simply be deposited into that LLC bank account. And any expenses that come up, the taxes, the maintenance, insurance, etc., Joe can simply pay those expenses now, writing a check out of the LLC bank account. Again, these reasons are why it's called a checkbook IRA or a checkbook IRA LLC, because it gives Joe, as the account owner, the ability to write those checks in and out of the account. He can use that cash, any of the cash in his LLC, to invest in other assets as well. He could open up a brokerage account, for instance, in the name of the LLC, or maybe a CD in the name of the LLC as well, and have control there. I had some other great questions, more questions come up here I'll get to. Someone said, why would repairs be different from finding a tenant? Just the way that we've operated as an IRA administrator, if you were going out and finding a tenant, getting a tenant involved, we don't think that rises to the level of really providing a service necessarily to your IRA account. I can certainly see where it can be a blurry line a little bit, but as far as doing the maintenance and repairs, there's no doubt that doing that adds value to the LLC or to your IRA account. You're enhancing the value of the IRA through your own labor. To physically doing the work. It's just, again, one of the lines we draw. As far as finding a tenant, you could always have a property manager or some other service find those for you if you were concerned. Just historically, we've permitted our clients to take that role. Another question, can an IRA LLC own, for example, 50% of the property and the other 50% individually? I think what this question is referring to is using your IRA as a partner alongside yourself to make a purchase. And it is possible. You have to be very careful in doing it. But if you had money in your IRA account, or in this case your IRA LLC, have that IRA LLC buy 50% of the property, and then you could also buy the other 50% individually. So you kind of are doing a partnering situation where you're putting some IRA funds, some personal funds into the purchase. If you do a partnering arrangement, you just have to make sure that you then split all expenses and all income 50-50 between the two two entities. In this case, 50% of the income and expenses go in and out of your IRA. The other 50% go in and out of your own personal account. So it is possible to do that. I would caution you, if it's something you're looking at doing, please get in touch with us and kind of help you, give you a little bit of guidance there. You might need an attorney to help you out as well to get that done. Does an LLC apply for a tax ID number? The answer is yes. In this case, in order to open up a bank account for his LLC, whatever bank Joe goes to is going to want to have a tax ID number associated with that particular LLC account. So he will need to get a separate tax ID number for the LLC to open up a bank account. Now, as far as filing a tax return, which is another question asked, does the LLC, does an LLC have to file a tax return? The answer generally is no. If it's a single member LLC, a lot of times they do not have to file a tax return because it's a disregarded entity for tax purposes. But if you do have multiple members in the LLC, so in the case of, instead of Joe just using just his IRA, maybe Joe's IRA and his buddy Tom's IRA both go into the LLC together, now you're going to have a partnership and you would be required to file a tax return. Now, no tax may be due, but the LLC would have to file a tax return in that circumstance. That's another good question to ask your tax advisor or your accountant as well. Do tenants write check to the LLC or the IRA? Again, the tenants that you have in the checkbook situation would write the check directly to the LLC and deposit that check into the LLC's bank account. Another question, can a checkbook arrangement be used to invest in notes as well? Most certainly. Your IRA, using a checkbook control structure, as I mentioned kind of at the bottom of this slide, if you have cash in an LLC bank account, you can invest it into a lot of different types of assets, whether it's a brokerage account, a CD, in this case, your question on notes and mortgages, that can certainly be done. This particular case study example is just someone buying real estate, but there's certainly seen clients invest and set up a checkbook IRA to do a bunch of different private lending opportunities as well. So that certainly is possible to do. Question, okay, is it possible to personally rent the property owned by the LLC, assuming market rental rates are paid? And unfortunately, the answer to that question is no. Again, you as a disqualified person or any disqualified person is prohibited from transacting with your IRA and the fact of being on the opposite side of the deal. So in this case, you as a tenant cannot rent the property from your IRA or from your IRA LLC. There is no exception for market rates or fair market value prices. It's strictly prohibited. So if your IRA owns real estate, you cannot stay there. You cannot rent it from yourself. And again, that restriction extends to all the disqualified persons as well. So it's great questions. Keep those questions coming as we go through, try to roll through the rest of this presentation. So buying this asset through a trust, very similar to buying it through an LLC, which is a couple of notable differences we'll discuss. Now, again, the first step for Joe, open up his account, get it funded, transfer the money over. We'll have the account number issued in less than 24 hours. Now, instead of asking for an operating agreement for an LLC, what we need to see for a trust is the private trust agreement, where within the private trust document, the IRA would be listed as the grantor, the IRA would be listed as the beneficiary. And again, advance IRA for benefit of Joe Smith's IRA, and his account number is what we should see and what we will be looking for within that particular private trust document. Joe must name somebody, okay, it's required, he must name somebody who's not disqualified as trustee. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but with the rules with regards to disqualified persons, because there's not the same case law for a trust, we require that he gets a non-disqualified person to act as trustee. Now, the trust is not public record. That's one difference between a trust and an LLC. There's nothing you have to file for with a state to get your trust active. You simply have to draft a private trust document and then have it executed. Now, we will, again, sign the trust document on behalf of the IRA once Joe has read and approved it and sent that copy to us. He would also want to get his trustee to sign that trust document as well to get the ball rolling. Now, again, funding of the trust, similar to the LLC, Joe's trustee is going to need to get a tax ID number for that trust in order to open up a bank account. Okay, again, any bank that you go to needs a tax ID number to associate the entity with. So you'll want to get a separate tax ID for the trust, and then or again for the LLC. Do not use your social, and you would not use the IRA's number. You would simply get a separate tax ID number, but once Joe's trustee has done that, he can get a bank account opened, and then similarly with the LLC, we would write a check from the IRA payable to the trust that Joe's trustee can take and deposit into that trust account. He'll then operate the investments similar to the LLC, but in this case, he will have to direct his trustee to purchase the assets in the name of the trust. His trustee is going to be the one signing the documents, entering into contracts, and the trustee is going to be receiving the income and paying all of the bills as well out of that particular trust account. So the big difference between a trust and an LLC, a couple things. One, again, an LLC is public record, and there's filing fees involved. The trust is not. It is generally less expensive. You don't have an annual filing fee for a trust. With an LLC, the IRA owner can act as manager. Under a trust, you need to have, your IRA would have to find a third party to act as the trustee. Good. Some other great questions came up. Can an LLC borrow money from others? The answer is yes. Your IRA LLC could borrow money from other people or a bank, for instance, as long as the loan. The one requirement whenever your IRA or whenever your IRA LLC borrows money, the requirement is that it has to borrow money in a non-recourse basis from somebody who's not disqualified. You are prohibited from personally guaranteeing any loan to your IRA or to your IRA LLC. So the LLC can borrow money as long as it's on a non-recourse basis. If your IRA is a private lender for the deal, you're lending money, are there restrictions on a disqualified person? The answer is yes. If your IRA is lending money to other people, your IRA is prohibited from lending money to any disqualified person. So your IRA cannot lend money to you, your spouse, kids, grandkids, parents, grandparents, any other entity owned by any of those individuals as well. So there are restrictions. If you're doing private lending, there are restrictions on who your IRA can actually lend to. So make sure you, again, come to one of our seminars, or again, go to our YouTube page. We do a whole seminar that on private lending that addresses those last two questions. Your IRA borrowing money or your IRA lending money to other people. So what about partnering with IRAs using LLCs? I mentioned a little while ago that it's possible you can have multiple parties. A lot of the checkbook structures that we see involve one IRA and one LLC, but it is possible to have multiple parties involved in that same IRA. But the IRA would then share in the income and expenses based on that percentage of ownership. An LLC can make it easier if you have a lot of different parties. An LLC makes it easier to manage the investments, receiving income, expenses without having a tenant, send a lot of different checks to multiple people. So an LLC a lot of times is used for those types of scenarios, and you have a manager holding the assets and doing all the administration on behalf of all the parties. But again, you have to be careful that if you're going to partner with somebody who's disqualified, again, so you're going to set up an LLC, maybe with your IRA and some of your personal funds, you have to be careful in setting that up and making sure you don't change anything going forward. So that's, again, a great reason to give us a call and ask kind of what the rules are as far as partnering versus transacting with disqualified persons. Now, if you ever want to remove money from the LLC or trust, the money first needs to come back to the IRA as a dividend or income. We will deposit that cash into your IRA, and then from there we can send the IRA owner a distribution and issue the 1099 to the IRA owner as well. You do not want to take cash from the LLC or trust out personally. That would be a taxable event to you at best. At worst, the IRS can consider that to be a prohibited transaction. You're taking money from your LLC or a trust directly personally, could be looked at as prohibited. So just make the extra step, send the money first to us, we'll send the funds to you, and properly report that to the IRS. Now, some of the pros and cons for the different scenarios. Using the IRA administrator, it keeps an arm's length from your funds. So again, somebody asked a question earlier about touching the money. You're not touching the money in this instance. And as such, you're less likely to do something that's prohibited. We've had a couple of questions. Your IRA lending money to somebody potentially who's disqualified. We actually had a client years ago who had a checkbook IRA, had a checkbook LLC for his account, made a loan out of his IRA to his daughter, which was a prohibited transaction. Didn't think to ask on whether or not that was allowed. So it's very easy for him to do something prohibited. But if he was using us directly, it would have been much harder for him to do that transaction because we would have caught that that last names were the same, or he'd said, I'm lending money to my daughter. So if you're using the IRA administrator and you don't have direct control over the funds, you're less likely to do something that's prohibited. And also, we keep very clear records of all activity within the IRA account. So we keep copies of all the rent checks we've deposited, all of the income we've deposited, and the expense we've paid as well. That's all in our system. We have a copy of it. Should you ever need it for IRS audit purposes, we can furnish the proof of all the money going in and out of your account. Now, the cons to the IRA administrator kind of way of doing things, there could be more administrative fees if you're buying multiple assets. Again, if you're buying and selling multiple properties, you're doing multiple loans from your IRA, you want to buy a lot of different things, and you're buying and selling, we would charge an administrative fee each time you buy or sell that asset, as well as possibly an annual record-keeping fee for each asset as well. Using an LLC can reduce those expenses because you're in control and you're the one actually making all of those purchases. When we're not involved, we're not going to charge a fee for an asset you purchased. And another con, again, the no ability to write check for an immediate purchase. If you're buying assets at the courthouse, the steps, you're buying at auction properties, or you're making investments that are just very time sensitive and you need a check right away. Having the checkbook control is going to give you that. Using the IRA administrator and using us, you're going to have to go through us to get those checks issued. Now, I would say our processing time is very fast. We usually do things within 1 to 2 business days, depending on if we're processing an investment or whether we're processing an expense. But we certainly do things very fast, but it's not immediate that you would have with the LLC. So the pros and the cons for the checkbook controls are kind of the reverse of what we were just talking about. Again, you're having quicker access to the funds. You can hold more assets in your account with lower fees. So you pay just one low annual record-keeping fee to us to hold the LLC. Even if your LLC has multiple assets, you're simply paying us one fee. Investing through LLCs and trusts can also give you potentially some asset protection or some anonymity. That's one, again, that's more of a legal aspect. You would talk to an attorney or someone about to find out exactly what protection you have, but there certainly is some available. And again, but the cons, you're responsible now for keeping accurate records. If you're somebody who does not keep receipts and does not balance a checkbook, this kind of control for you is real. This scenario is not for you. You're going to want somebody like Advanta pulling in all the rents, paying all the bills, and keeping records for you. If the IRS ever audits your checkbook control entity, you're going to have to need to show them all the income and all the expenses. So make sure you're someone who keeps good records. And again, there's a lack of oversight by the administrator, which makes it easier to engage in something that's prohibited. Again, if you have the checkbook and there's not somebody from Advanta that has to kind of sign off on the transaction, it could be definitely easier to do something that's against the rules. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do something that's prohibited even going through us if we're not aware of all the parties involved. If you fully disclose everything to us, we'll fully disclose kind of what issues you might have. But using the LLC makes it easier because you're not running the transactions through Advanta. So again, just to kind of wrap up the seminar, again, some of the 3 key points to take away. We went over the types of accounts you can self-direct. We talked about the administrator scenario versus using a checkbook IRA account. And we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of checkbook control. As far as which option is best for you, that's really, again, someone for a CPA or an attorney to best address with you. We can provide references to people who've done this before in the past as well. A lot of the clients do simply have the assets held by us and allow us to do the record keeping, but it is possible. If you decide up front, hey, I would rather have Advanta do all the record keeping initially, but decide later, hey, I might be okay with doing the checkbook control. You might just have to have deeds or assignments drafted, but you can switch between strategies at a later date. It just, again, might require some additional documentation. We do not provide counsel or advice on which way is best for you. We'll just kind of lay out the different scenarios. I had another question come up. If 2 people each have their own self-directed IRA, can they invest both of those in the same LLC, then use that LLC to buy land? If so, how would you set up the LLC such that the older of the 2 people could take the property as a distribution once that person reached 59.5 years old to then build on? The answer to the first question, yes, two people with the same, each having an IRA can invest into the same LLC and use that LLC to buy land. That is certainly possible. Now, the second half of the question is a little trickier. We have had people who've taken a property as distribution once they reach 59 and a half so that they could then live on and use that particular property. But in this particular question, if the two people who own the IRAs are, say, a husband and wife, or a father-son or a mother-daughter situation where they're disqualified to each other, if one of them takes the distribution at 59 and a half and takes the property out, they still could not live on that property or use that property, since someone who's disqualified with their IRA would still own the other half. So it's kind of very tricky how you would structure this. Now, these people weren't related. One of them, you wouldn't have to really structure the LLC really in any special fashion, other than to simply say that at 59 and a half, the person who's reached that age can take their interest in the LLC out personally, and then in turn have that property deeded to their personal name. So that's a little bit more involved question. I encourage you to give us a call on that one. And getting to that point, again, we had some prior learning opportunities for you to take advantage of. We have the seminars coming up on Friday, both in our Atlanta and Tampa office. We still have seats available in both locations on private lending with your IRA. And also the webinar next Tuesday on how to buy real estate in IRA. Make sure you want to check in for that as well. But getting started, we make it easy to start. Getting an account opened, getting the account funded, and then step 3, ultimately choosing your investment. You can call us today to schedule your free consultation. We can spend time with you going over what it is that you're looking to do, again, giving you the pros and cons of both scenarios. And for more information, you can also contact me directly. My contact email and phone number is on this last slide. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or at least have one of my colleagues or associates help you as well. And you can also, our website is another great wealth of information on there with our blog articles, links to our YouTube page, where again, all these webinars that we do, like the one today, are recorded and housed for you to go back and watch at your convenience. So go to our website, advancedira.com, sign up for some other upcoming events or seminars, or again, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you. And the last question that came in, we will send everybody a copy of the presentation, all of the slides via email, so you will be getting a copy of those as well. So again, thank you everybody for logging on today. We look forward to hearing from you.